Good morning. Today I'll have an update on COVID-19 testing before I answer any questions. We know that St. Louis County has a positivity rate for COVID-19 that's almost 9%. A 9% positivity rate concerns me, and it should concern you as well. Positivity rates like this or higher are being seen across the state, and that puts Missouri in what's called the red zone. Now, to put that in perspective, a year ago, we were talking about the red zone regarding tick-borne illnesses and Legionella. We know how to contain those diseases, we know how to treat them, and we know how to prevent them. COVID-19 is very different because it's new. The more we're able to understand about its spread in the community, the more we're able to talk about containment and prevention. Right now, testing is our best way to collect data. In St. Louis County, we have tested over 225,000 people for COVID-19, and St. Louis County Department of Health has administered 12,500 of those tests. We've administered those through either of our testing locations in North County or South County, or our pop-up locations throughout the county. We've also administered 3,000 tests to people in our Department of Corrections. As we deal with the virus spread in our community, we have continued to expand our criteria for testing. Testing is now available to anyone who requests it. So if you were unable to obtain a test early on because you did not meet the criteria for testing at that time, you should consider being tested now. Our Department of Public Health and public health experts recommend that anyone who is in regular, frequent contact with members of the general public should have a test, even if you don't have symptoms and even if you have not been in contact with someone who is known to be positive for COVID-19. COVID-19 testing is critical to understand the spread of this virus in our community, to understand the best way to treat it, the best way to prevent it, the best way to keep someone from catching it. So if you'd like to make an appointment for a free test through our County Department of Public Health, then please go to our website at sdlcorona.com and click on the testing tab. If you don't have internet access, you can call us at 314-615-0574. Drive-through testing is done at any of our pop-up locations or at our North County location in Berkeley in the parking lot, at 6121 North Hanley, or in our South County location at 4580 Lindbergh Boulevard. And these are both drive-through testing sites. Thank you, and I would be glad to answer any questions.
Dr. Page, can you talk a little bit about the firing of Hazel Irby? She tweeted about it yesterday. It seemed like it was a little bit contentious.
Yeah, I've known Hazel as a colleague and as a person for a long time. She was my first choice for the director, to be the first director of the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I don't regret that choice. Now I'm looking for more focus in that department and the ability to accomplish even more. And I'm excited for what civil rights activist Kenny Murdoch can bring to that office. I'm looking forward to hearing his ideas and moving forward.
Was she fired?
Go ahead.
Was she fired?
Well, I called Hazel last night, and she was aware that we would be making staff changes this week. I told her that we would not need her anymore in our department, in our office, and that we would be moving forward, and I thanked her for her service to the community. She wanted to be able to say it first, and Twitter is one mechanism to do that, but I made a statement early on that I don't have anything, any criticism of her or that department, and I intend to keep that commitment. And I'm not going to criticize her today, and I'm certainly not going to do it on Twitter.
She tweeted that African American women were not valued in the administration with all of the racial tension that's been happening in the county and the city. What's your response to that comment?
Well, I can't respond to all of the wild accusations. We just went through a whole lot of that, and we're moving forward. I don't regret Hazel as my choice to be my first leader of the Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we're going to move forward with new focus and the opportunity to accomplish even more And I'm excited about what our civil rights activist Kenny Murdoch will bring to that department, his new energy and his new ideas.
And then can you also talk about Proposition P that passed by 63% of the vote, and now we're hearing from officers in the county that they're being told to lay off officers or cut the budget by about $7 million.
Well, this is difficult times for everyone in St. Louis County. We know that we are in a recession in our country and that sales tax revenues are down across the country and across the community in St. Louis County. Proposition P is a sales tax and those revenues are down significantly. We don't know exactly how much, but they are down. And we're going to look at those numbers. We ask all departments in the county to show us what their budget would look like if it were flat or had a 5% cut or a 10% cut. And the police department is now looking at what a budget would be like flat without any increase in revenue, recognizing that Proposition P sales taxes are down quite a bit. This is a complicated question, and it's frustrating for everyone, like this pandemic is frustrating for everyone. It touches all walks of life across our economy. People have lost their lives. It's interfering with opportunities for school this fall. It's very frustrating. It's tragic, and we're going to find a path forward.
What about, so I just want to be clear, you were looking at all departments, potentially cutting 5% of all departments, because with all the talk, especially nationally, with defunding the police, I want people to understand what's happening here.
Well, where sales tax revenues are down across the country, across the community in St. Louis County, Proposition P is a sales tax, and that revenue is down significantly. The county depends on property taxes and sales taxes for its revenue. We've done a lot of things this year to cut costs. As soon as we recognized that we were headed towards a public health crisis, we stopped all non-emergency spending in St. Louis County, and we initiated a lot of safeguards. We have begun the process of selling real estate in St. Louis County to have more revenue, and we have refinanced our debt and saved $22 million this year. So we're doing everything possible to conserve and to find new sources of revenue from refinancing debt and selling property that's been on the books for a long time, that's been vacant. We're looking at cutting costs, and some of those cost-cutting measures include asking our departments to show us what a 5 or 10% cut would look like so we can make these tough decisions moving forward. And the police department is looking at what a flat budget would look like with no increase in the face of significantly declining revenue, sales tax revenue this year. And part of that conversation yesterday at the police board was what that might look like. And that is certainly frustrating to people who are affected by that.
I still have a couple more questions. I wasn't sure whether.
Sure.
One question that I just got on a text from a reporter was to clarify what she just asked, which is, does that request apply to all departments or just to the police department?
No, we're asking all departments across St. Louis County to tell us what a flat budget would look like, what a budget that was 5% less would look like, or what a budget that was 10% less would look like. We have some very serious and difficult questions coming up with our budget in St. Louis County. We know we are in a recession. We know that sales tax revenue is declining, and we know that the primary source of one of the great sources of funding our departments in St. Louis County is sales tax, and that includes Proposition P. So we have to, the budget authority belongs to the council, and I have to prepare a recommended budget to the council based on what our departments tell me. And these are all departments across county government, our health department, our public works department, transportation, planning, justice services, all across St. Louis County. We have to look at these and we have to ask these questions, and no department can be immune from being asked these tough questions and telling us what it would look like if there were no money for more increases, or they might have to take a cut.
Looking at the county's COVID site, we had seen a couple of some discrepancies with regards to the new cases listed versus what the cases were on the graph directly next to that. I think on August 17th, I had written down there were 150 new cases, but then just 78 on the graph. And there were a couple different other days where there was that large discrepancy.
Right.
Can you speak to that and explain that?
Sure. So what happens is we get data in bundles over time. Some comes from the state. It's still coming in on paper reports. We're trying to get those over to electronic reports. Sometimes that data goes back in time and we have to adjust those numbers. And one of those, I think that one of them is an average and one of them is actually case numbers. But I believe that over time those correct. And the most important thing to watch on our site is not necessarily the daily number, but the moving 7-day average. Because there's so much discrepancy in reporting, because we have trouble getting test results quickly. Sometimes they come in 3 or 4 days, and sometimes we get them in a week to 10 days. And that's a national problem because of the explosion of COVID and the need for testing. But the most important number to watch, the most important numbers to watch on our website are the moving 7-day averages, and that's how we make our decisions.
And then I also noticed on the county site that it appears that not a single person under 40 years old has died from COVID within St. Louis County. Has there been any talk in light of that number? You're
Yeah, I don't know if the county website says that. I would be surprised if no one under 40 has died, because that is not, I would be very surprised if that's true, because we know that people under 40 get sick and die, and we know that that happens with this virus. And loss of life is certainly one measure of catastrophe, but the real health impact of COVID is significant, and even people who recover are lingering with peripheral nerve injuries, peripheral neuropathies, and chronic lung disease that goes on for weeks and may be a lifetime of disability. We don't understand the long-term impact of this virus at all, including loss of life. But we know that people under 40 do die. Kids do get sick from this virus, and some of them unfortunately do die.
Based on the trends that we're seeing right now in the county schools, a lot of schools have started their virtual learning. What are you thinking, or you all thinking for the future or the near future of the schools as they begin?
Well, first of all, I'm glad everyone is prepared for a virtual learning experience. I'm glad we're having this serious discussion about a digital divide in our community, something we've talked about for years. And this crisis has forced our hand, and we're lucky that we have some resources through our federal CARES stimulus grant to try and bridge that divide. But I think anytime we talk about virtual schools, we have to talk about the digital divide and how that doesn't work for everybody in St. Louis County. And we're working pretty ambitiously to try and get Chromebooks and hotspots in the hands of kids who need them. But we need to be prepared for virtual learning this fall. If the positivity rate and the case numbers get down low enough, then we may be able to have some hybrid models. I know some schools are going to try that, and we'll see how that goes. I think the schools that are trying a hybrid model now, or an all in-class setting, are absolutely prepared to be virtual or partial virtual moving forward, as they should be. But we have to see where this virus goes, and if we could get universal mask wearing in our community, in our region, it would solve a lot of problems. That is really the easiest thing to do, and not having that is holding us back. I believe that our public health orders over the past 3 or 4 weeks have flattened the curve, have started to take this down a bit, but it's still too high. And we're still going to be impacted by what's happening in our region. We're going to be impacted by people from St. Louis County who travel outside of our region and come back. We really need to have universal mask wearing, and that is the most important thing we can do moving forward.
Piggybacking off of that question with regards to schools, I was outside this morning talking about St. Louis University and the 22 students there who had tested positive. The university was very transparent about that number, but we have also heard of other colleges or universities perhaps not telling people if they've had positive tests. Are there any regulations on that? Is there anything outside of just kind of a moral obligation?
Yeah, so there's a lot of conflict and law around the public's right to know about what's happening in an institution or with individuals, and that individual's right to privacy. And we try to navigate that as best we can. If we have an outbreak somewhere and we don't believe that we can communicate with everyone who might have been exposed, and that would be the time when we would talk more broadly about an exposure. And that's kind of the model everyone's following around the country. And we also have limited resources to do contact tracing, so we can't always, we can't always track and report every small place that has an outbreak from a resource standpoint. So as long as we're communicating with the people that are exposed, and that if we're not able to communicate that, then that's when we would follow our guidelines about a more broad notification. And I think that's a pattern that we see across the country.
So what would you say that a parent, someone who has a student, at college, maybe they saw some chatter on Facebook or something about positive cases, but haven't gotten any concrete communication? We know there's lots of rumors going around right now.
Well, first of all, let's step back. This is a pandemic. It's something we haven't done before. It's very frustrating. It's tragic. It affects everybody in our community one way or another. And it's going to be frustrating for a few more months until we have a vaccine widely available and we can get past this and move forward as a community. And we will get past it. We will move forward. But we have to be very careful about social media and rumors. And we would look towards the primary source, look for the schools to communicate what's happening, and look for our Department of Public Health to communicate what's happening, other institutions to communicate what's happening, and be very careful with responding to what you might see on social media. We're going to do our best, and I know our educational institutions will do our best to protect our students, to keep our students and staff's safety at our foremost priority. But this is a very challenging time, and it's going to be frustrating for a few more months.
I had one last question, if that's okay.
It's
I know that
okay.
there was a bit of a mishap yesterday on one of the Zoom meetings with something graphic coming up in the middle of the Board of Commission meeting. I know that this has been an issue with Zoom calls before, any talk in how the county is protecting security?
No, I mean, we know about the vulnerabilities of Zoom. It's a national story. I'm surprised it hasn't hit here sooner. I heard about that, and I'm sure that everyone is taking all the safeguards they can to prevent that from happening in the future, and that we take those safeguards on a regular basis. But we're all subject to hacking, and that was an example of what we've heard about in the country over the past few months as Zoom and other teleconferencing has become more necessary and more popular.
There was one more question that I received from a reporter, and that was, can you talk about the people who are responding, people who question the timing of Hazel Irby's departure from county government coming so close after the election?
Well, when I first took office, I made a dozen or so changes, and today I announced another 5 or 6 new appointments, and I may announce more in the coming weeks. We'll see. We're talking about staffing changes moving forward, but these are what we do in county government. We make changes, and this is one of those changes. Okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you.